Debuting in Medarot Survivor's first and designed by the legendary Junichi Akutsu of several mecha designs across the entirety of mecha genre as a whole, this is ATN00 Spatha Regina, with a kit of Guardian, Hard Pile, All Guard, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Super Armor, which nullifies all paralyzed type ailments such as Thunder, Tornado, and Freeze a certain number of hits relative to the leg's part rank. Now, Spatha Regina has been in Meta Survivor for a pretty hot minute now, so folks that do play the game or stay up to date with it are kind of aware of how nice her design looks and just what kind of combat that she does bring to the series as a whole. But Meta S is definitely a way to compound on everything that she does and actually give her a rounded kit to make her just as viable, not just in the realm of 1 versus 1,000, but also on teams where team player or even solo fights may also determine victories or losses to this Athena type. Guardian on the head part is a brand new skill being introduced into the game, which simply explained combines the effects of Guard Boost and Field Control. Guard Boost essentially will buff the resist stats of the user and all allies by 50%, making hits notably less painful than they were before, and making it a whole lot easier than before to keep damage as low as possible. Field Control, on the other hand, will recalibrate all leg terrain compatibilities for the user and allies to A rank and maximize heavy limits for everyone across the board for a certain number of ticks of the Robattle clock. This means that not only will you be able to reduce damage and keep yourself alive a whole lot easier than before, but you'll also be able to negate any terrain incompatibilities or imbalances that your team might have, such as with a mandated terrain requirement or a mandated leg type requirement. This will be a very good way to negate it and guarantee you can still stay in the fight with even half of a decent boost and benefit between a stat boost and a terrain negation. Hard Pile on the right arm is a melee skill that, when used, has a very powerful and excruciatingly painful damage modifier if used correctly. Simply explained, it is a defense-ignoring piercing attack that adds the combined sum of the user's resist stats, melee and resist, to power when attacking. This means ultimately for a lot of very high agile or high mobility lightweights which don't have a lot of armor, you probably won't be seeing a whole lot of damage plus. This is going to be mostly for your high bulky builds, such as your heavy walls, your heavy armor DPSs. This is going to be a very good way to capitalize on how much bulk you have and return it in kind as converted 1-to-1 to power. And the defense ignore on top of that means it's going to be piercing and ignoring any defenses the enemy tries to put up against you, making it an extraordinarily painful attack for everybody involved, whoever's on the tail end of the impaling spear of this Athena type. All Guard on the left arm is a defense skill which combines gunpowder, optic, and gravity guards all into one. At the use of 2 charges per use, while on the defensive line, you're able to negate all optic skills, gravity skills, and gunpowder skills at 0 damage across the board, as long as you remain on the line. Now, granted, this does mean that you will be taking any regular hits from, say, basic shooting or basic melee attacks, and of course have your charges reduced accordingly. But this means that if the enemy tries to use gravity for heavy punish, gunpowder for sure hit DPS, or even optic for CG reliant DPS as well, this is a very good way to guarantee that nothing gets through whatsoever as long as Spatha Regina remains on the line. Of course, only having 2 charges does mean you will have to juggle it just a little bit carefully, but having a heating stat of over 800 and a cooling of just over 700 means that you're going to be blazing back and forth from the command line to taking another turn, so ultimately that really shouldn't be too much of a problem. Biped legs means that Spatha Regina will have fairly solid coverage across the board with terrain compatibility, and her leg stats across the board, as befitting of a Lady of Warfare, are definitely very solid in the upper very good ranks. A base mobility of 906 is very solid, as this means she will have a very good base speed before anything else comes into effect to modify that. An evade of a flat 1000 means she's going to be kind of dodging or grazing essentially as she sees fit. Don't really expect her to do so too often, but if she feels like it, she'll surprise you if it does cross her mind. But a melee resist of 1744 and a shoot resist of 1560 are both superb numbers. This means that she can hold her own up close and personal and tank hits from afar just as well, with everything keeping the damage as low as possible across the board. And that's not even including before Guardian kicks in to boost her resist even higher by another 50% each. Ultimately, though, in the armor department, she is just as bulky as you would expect. A head armor of just barely 3,900, a right arm at almost 4,500, a shield arm at just barely 5,400, and legs almost 5,100, means that this Athena type is very, very healthy, not just in the armor department, but also in the resist department as well. And super armor on top of that means that anyone that's trying to curb her from defending her allies with a paralyzed ailment, tornado anti-air, freeze, thunder shot, hyper freeze, that is going to do absolutely nothing to her whatsoever. This stalwart warrior type is going to guarantee that she's going to move to and from the line and nothing is going to stand in her way. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Spatha Regina a pretty solid 8 out of 10. She's extremely synergetic between Guardian, Hardpile, and her base leg stats across the board, because she's already got very impressive damage reduction on top of, at base, but adding guard boost for another 50% and then Hardpile to capitalize on top of that means that she's not only negating any terrain incompatibilities on terrains that she's fighting on, but she's also boosting her defenses to make her incoming damage even less, or damage taken even less, but also capitalize on Hardpile being even more painful than it is before. And if she's not able to use Hardpile for whatever reason, boosted defenses means that she can also use All Guard extremely easily and keep that damage as low as possible for anything that is not gravity, gunpowder, or optic. The only real detriment here to really keep in mind is the fact that she is kind of scattered, which means you will have to decide kind of carefully how you want to build her between a solid DPS with Hardpile, or if you want to go all in with All Guard and make her a defense oriented. But ultimately, that really still isn't too much of an issue, because she can still truck very, very easily with super armor, guaranteeing that nothing stops her at all when she's running to and from the line. As mixed parts, I do have to rate her just a little bit higher at an 8.5 out of 10 for these same reasons. Guardian will be fantastic for anything that does need higher bulk or to negate any terrain incompatibilities, essentially in the same way folks like to use Dominion in some cases, with being able to do the same thing with the field control buff. But being able to pair it with anything that capitalizes on resist, such as with Hardpile, or anything with bulky legs, with bulky biped legs that have a heavy support of 2, and super armor is honestly pretty tough to argue against. And if you do need it for anything, All Guard will be very solid as well for being able to negate all attributes, as such the name, All Attribute Guard.